Hey everybody, and welcome to something a little bit different for our channel. I've gotten a lot of requests over the years to do some Let's Play series, and I finally decided that it would be fun to play through some of the original RCT1 scenarios. So that's what we're going to do. I've done these on stream, and you can join me on twitch.tv/amusementacademy, but I'm also going to post time lapses here with some custom audio overlaid, just talking through the build process as we fast forward through the actual video. So we're going to try and play them in order, although that may not necessarily be how we go about it. But of course, we're going to start with Forest Frontiers, which is what we've seen today. And let's go ahead and jump right into it. Hope you'll enjoy the series. So Forest Frontiers is sort of that quintessential RCT scenario. I mean, obviously it's the first, but I feel like it's just one of those ones that I keep going back to in my head, and I have very distinct memories of playing this for the first time. It's a pretty low goal, 250 guests by the end of year one, so it's also kind of fast, but it does give you a good intro to the park. And you've got a pretty clear space to work with here. A little bit of theming there with those squirrel topiaries, but I always tend to start with a carousel because I feel like that's maybe the way to go. You do get a decent amount of little rides to begin with, but I want to go with more of a midway style here, where we build out sort of a central path and then put rides on either side of it. Since you can't really do double paths in RCT1 because it doesn't really have that same pathfinding that RCT2 does. I tried to be a little bit more simple with this and keep the single path wide, but also try and build some realism in here to the overall thing. And that's going to be something we'll try and carry through all of the scenario builds that we do, is some touch of realism through the whole thing. It's obviously going to be a little bit of a mix of gameplay in that. So I don't usually build car rides, but I thought, that would be a good way to start this one. Put a tracked ride in there. And here we go with creating a little bit of the midway with these side-by-side paths connecting every once in a while. Nice little line of trees, some flowers, a little bit of fencing and everything. So I think that's probably the way to go with with all this. So we played this scenario on stream on the 25th anniversary of RCT, and I thought it was kind of a fun tribute to that, which is why we started doing this initially. I don't usually play the scenarios, as you probably are aware of if you follow this channel a little bit, but it is still nostalgic to me and a lot of fun. I really like Mick and Man's RCT station. Andrew's scenario play is a lot of fun because it just has a very nostalgic feel to it, and it really does mix just that nice aesthetic appeal with the gameplay as well. So I kind of want to try and emulate that. We're going to start our coaster here. I initially wanted to do a Zero Tivoli medium, which is kind of what I was starting with right here initially. And I've done it before, and I know I can do this layout, but under the pressures of the time constraints, I didn't really want to take too much time to figure it out. And at the same time, too, I was like, all right, well, let's do something custom, because why not? We'll do a custom. I guess it's a Zero coaster if we're going to go by the track style, although I tend to think of these almost as Vekoma Junior coasters. So I thought this little kind of left-right dive would be sort of an interesting start to it, and then kind of work our way around a little bit and do something a little bit different as far as that goes. So we're going to give that a try and see how it goes. The problem is, as you can see here, I'm having a little bit of trouble with clearances and trying to get it to figure out exactly where I can fit the ride. So it's getting a little bit messy. I think, as we go forward here with these scenarios, I may do some branch saves to try and figure out some decent coaster layouts without having to do it on the spot. Although, to the same token, I think figuring it out on the spot is kind of for fun too, just to try and figure out exactly how you can fit in a ride with the time constraints that you have, and still manage to make it look pretty good, and also make it work within the bounds of your scenario. In general, scenarios have a little bit tighter confines than I like to build realistically, with the stretched hills and things, with using the shallow pieces and stuff that you may have seen on stream. You can't really do that as much in the scenarios and still make it look right, but we're going to try as best as we can to make it fit, and we'll kind of work through that. We're still struggling here, trying to get this coaster in, and at this point it's kind of becoming more of a frustration of, let's just get the thing done. I don't really care what it looks like as much, and the interest in doing some realism kind of goes out the window a little bit, because we're not really emulating any real coaster manufacturer here at this point. It's kind of all over the place. I mean, I guess you could still call it a custom zero or something, but at the same time, I'm not really seeing any kind of main manufacturer that this is based off of. Um, we are using the SV4 file. So this is OpenRCT2, but we are using the SV4 file. And my goal here is to do this without any kind of like zero clearancing. We're certainly not going to add money as far as that goes. We're going to try and play this as basically standard as we can. I'm really not planning to use like the shift key or the control key for placing scenery, just because I want to keep it as original RCT1 vanilla as I can. There's going to be a couple things here and there where we'll probably skirt those rules just a little bit, but at the same time, I do want to make it at least within the style of the original game and try and keep it as clean as I can in that regard. So I'll throw in some benches and some of the food stands. I always tend to neglect the food stands. Like, I really don't research them until much later in the game, usually. And in general, I find that in RCT, it really doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. The peeps don't seem to really care about that. But that's okay. I don't think we have too much of a problem there. I'm going to try and spruce up our little car ride a little bit here. We'll drop a small pond in there, a little bit of landscaping, and some hedges. I try and keep the fencing, if possible, to maybe 4 or 5 types throughout the entire park, because you really don't want to get into this thing where you have so many different types of fencing throughout. So the little post and rope fence is probably my favorite kind, so you'll see I use that one quite a bit. And then the hedge is just kind of a nice aesthetic to me. So the haunted house, I joked about this on stream, but I feel like every haunted house I build has to be like up on a hill or kind of in some little valley with a precipice and a bunch of dark trees around it, and then this kind of dirt path and all these that sort of brick and wrought iron type fencing. I don't know why, it just feels like that was always the thing that had to happen. Not like you really see that in real parks necessarily, but I don't know. For me, if we're gonna build the haunted house, it's got to have that same sort of aesthetic. And I thought, in the corner, sort of looming over everything, seems like the best way to go about it. So we'll put a little bit more theming effort onto that than we might otherwise. We're also going to break out this white and kind of iron fencing, which I don't really find a huge amount of use for, because it just rarely matches the aesthetic that I'm going for. But we're going to do it in this instance, and I think it looks okay as a main kind of pathway lining. We're also using the Chinese cedar tree here on the middle because I like the way that you can see through it, so you really don't obscure a lot of things, but it still has a nice effect with it, a lot of greenery and those kind of nice branches, I suppose. Um, So now we're trying to look into a wooden coaster, because these are the 2 coasters you get initially. You get the junior coaster, and then you get the wooden coaster. So I feel like a wooden coaster always has to fit into this park. I don't know. For me, it goes hand in hand with Forest Frontiers, is that you always have a carousel, you always have a wooden coaster. I'm not really sure why, but it's the rules. I don't make the rules. I just play it. Uh, so we're going to base our coaster here off of Phoenix at Knoebels in Pennsylvania, which is one of my favorite coasters. Does a very nice job, super historic. One of the ones that kind of kicked off the relocation movement of coasters in the U.S. Since it was relocated from Texas, kind of board by board and numbered and everything as it went across. So a pretty cool story to the whole thing, but great ride in general. If you ever have a chance to go up there, Knoebels is just an amazing park to begin with. But it's got this sort of double figure 8 layout with a crossover in the middle. A little bit hard to do in RCT because of the diagonals. You don't have that shallow of a diagonal. You kind of need a half diagonal almost, as it turns out. But we're going to do our best to work that through, put a parallel track here adjacent to the lift hill. I always do like to use parallel tracks as best as I can in wooden coasters. It just looks so much better. Phoenix has this kind of signature double up, double down element as well, and I'm going to try and emulate that too. So we got that here right against the lift hill. Although, as we turn around here, we're going to have a little bit of issues crossing over. So in order to do that, we're going to give priority to the crossing, and then we'll go back through and fix this double up, double down to just be a double up, and then kind of a bigger drop, and then maybe a little bit of a surprise airtime moment there at the end. Then we'll bring it into the brakes. We can't do curve brakes in vanilla without any hacks, so we're just going to have to pretend that that curve around the back is a brake run as well. But we got our station here. I don't like doing entrance and exit on the same side just purely from a realism standpoint, but it is what it is, and I think it's fine here. We're able to skirt in that little exit pathway right along the backside of that Ferris wheel, which I think looks pretty nice as far as that goes. Put a couple benches in there too, and a bathroom. But that runs pretty well. I got the flat corners, not too fast for the flats that we're going to kill our stats. I've never been terribly interested in stats as I build coasters, but with scenario play, you got to pay slightly more attention to it. So here is one area where we are ignoring the shift rule because I wanted to make a little tunnel over top of the outro run here out of the station, this pre-lift section, just because I think it looks nice. But that's all that we're going to do as far as that goes. So now we're into the backside of the park, and I feel like as you go through, especially with, well, pretty much all the scenarios really, you always build so much more densely at the front of the park because you have all these little flat rides and everything. And I've never been one to do the same flat ride multiple times in a park. I know, from a gameplay standpoint, it doesn't really matter, but for me, I don't know. I always thought it was kind of weird if I put, say, 2 scramblers or 2 carousels or whatever in the park. So I tended not to, but that also means that you get into more tracked rides in the back, so you end up with more of a sparse or park as you go further back into your park. But trying to offset this a little bit, I built a nice little pond here that we're gonna put a pirate ship over the corner of. Again, that's one of those things that I always feel like you got to put along water or over water or just kind of somewhere close. So that's what we're gonna do here. Do a little bit of theming there with the rock and some of the bushes. Drop on our spiral slide because that's an easy button and a small ride that fits really well into a lot of different spaces. And of course, you can't have one of these little ponds without having a boat hire. I think we only have the rowboats available for this one, so that's what we're going to use. If I have the option, I will usually use the swan boats for the aesthetic because I think it looks nice and it fits well. So there we go, have those working well, and then those bulrush plants are always a nice little lifesaver here with the just little simple aesthetic moments and everything. So one more coaster for this park, trying to figure out what to do. We could do a suspended coaster, but those are so expensive, and we're not making a boatload of money right now, so it's probably not the right way to go as far as that goes. So, looking at a couple different things while we're trying to make a little bit of money here, just doing some landscape and things like that. With the year timeline for this one, it's a pretty quick scenario. Like, you're in and out very, very quickly. So we're gonna do a shuttle loop because it just fits. It's not a custom ride, but it works okay within the space. So the challenge we run into here is that I don't have enough room to do a proper shuttle loop where I have the launch track and everything, and then the properly kind of spaced and shaped spike hills. So that's a little bit frustrating as far as that goes. It means that I have to shorten it up just a little bit. And, for my eyes, sacrifice and realism, in the end, it really doesn't matter too much, but it kind of is what it is. We'll also shorten up the train here a little bit and make that work. But testing it out here, it's close to the exit there, or the end of the track there, which concerns us just a little bit because I don't want the extra weight of the peeps to launch this thing off the end, but we'll make it work, and it does okay as far as that goes. I always do try and maintain existing trees if I can, so weaving this queue in and around. It never ends up working quite as nicely as I want it to, but it's one of those things that the intention was good, but the execution is not ever so hot as far as that goes. From a pathing standpoint, I do like these little squares. It just feels like more of a little plaza. It gives you something to put in the middle. You can use the fountains or the statues, so those are easy. That geometric fountain was always sort of my go-to because I liked it. Didn't have the animals on it, so it was sort of this just generic fountain that I thought fit well. I prefer a square one, to be honest, but the only square one is the Roman fountain, and we didn't have that. So, is what it is on this one. But we're going to fill in some trees here, give it a little bit of more kind of a forested look, and then also put a viewing space here for the loop. Because if you're going to build a looping coaster, you ought to have a view to it. And then, kind of lastly, here before we win the scenario, we're going to drop in a log flume. Again, this is one of those that I feel like is necessary in this park. Always love a good log flume, and it just fits this sort of conifer forested place. So here we are winning the scenario. We're going to play a little bit more just to fill out the park. We're not too far from filling it out, so kind of like to do that if we can. But trying to figure out the best way to drop this ride in here. Typically, I don't build stuff on the ground, track rides anyway, as most of you know from my custom scenery type playing. But log flumes I'm generally okay with as far as that goes. It's really just a matter of trying to build out the rest of it, and I like having a little reservoir for the splash if I can. But sometimes it's just you don't have the time to really, or the money to really make that happen. So we're going to wrap around the side of this with the queue. Pretty big queue because these always draw a lot of guests, and the ride takes forever, so there's always a huge line. But we got our exit here over top of the drop, which I thought was kind of fun. So almost kind of like a splash sort of thing. Not like the splashes would necessarily get large enough here in real life, but at the same time, I think it's kind of a nice little feature. And then I think it's also worth here connecting across around the shuttle loop. So now we have a loop of path, which is always better than a spur if you can do it. So we'll kind of set that in there. And that sort of finishes our main build out as far as the scenario is concerned. But we're going to do a little bit more just because, it feels nice to fill out kind of all the space. And we didn't buy any of the extra land. I don't really feel like we need to, or that's necessary for building this out. But we'll at least build out the park proper, as we'll call it, as far as that goes. So one of the things that I like doing is tracked rides, and trains are especially fun, but I have a pet kind of peeve about trains, and to an extent monorails in this game, is that I don't like to make them go up and down hills, because the hills are kind of steep in the game, and I feel like in general, you don't see that because most trains can't do steep hills by any means. So I think about that in terms of it's a ride to build early on in your construction of a park, but as far as scenario play goes, rarely do you have the money to afford a substantial, or not even substantial, but a reasonable sized train ride in a park. So it's one of those things that I rarely build in scenario play because you just don't have the space to put it in, because you already kind of cut off a lot of your circulation with pathway, and you now that you can afford the money for the train here later in the scenario, it's at that point where it just doesn't really make sense to put it in there anymore. So we're thinking about that, but in the meantime, we'll do a little bit of park management here, getting some handymen. I rarely set the walking spaces for them just because I kind of just don't want to deal with it and let them run around. But sometimes you get to that. For the most part, this park is clean enough that I can just kind of let them wander, and it's not too much of a problem as far as that goes. But thinking about this train a little further, it looks like you can kind of loop it around this lake without too much trouble. We have to kind of modify some existing pathways and stuff. So you'll see there that I added a little bit of money. Now that we've beaten the scenario, I feel okay about doing that, and I'm not too broken up about it. So I think it's okay. But I am going to still maintain no hacking, so we're not going to go across the train tracks, even though I know you can kind of do that in some of the more recent open RCT stuff. We're going to avoid that in this instance, and we're going to build up underneath and then come up top. I think it's kind of a neat little space here for the train to go in between the pathway and the water. Just figures it's kind of a picturesque little walkway space here. But it does require a lot more adjustment of the pathways than I think I maybe necessarily had expected initially. But I don't know. I feel like the look is worth it in the end. It's kind of a neat neat feeling, and I always enjoy having real parks that have trains. So this is a worthy endeavor in my opinion. Even though I am having to temporarily cut off the walkway space to a lot of what we've got going. So we kind of got it halfway through here, trying to figure out how we're going to do the pathways through some of the other areas here. Knowing the station wants to go here, so we're going to wrap it around a little bit, kind of back on itself. We've got the space to do it, and we might as well fill it. So this is what we'll set up here. I'm going to move that viewing area, but we'll keep it as far as a pathway nearby, so that there is some space to view, and that's okay. And there we go. We'll build a little up and over as far as that goes. Pathway to walk around the thing. And there we go. I try and do turns sort of continuously, so I don't have just random S-bends in the middle of straight sections. Like I like to tack it on to the end of a curve or something, so it looks sort of like a continuous curve. The flow for me is a big thing. That's why all my log flumes almost never have straight sections in them. They really just kind of curve, S-bend, curve, S-bend, curve, S-bend, and just really try and fit the whole darn thing in there in a way that, tends to just keep the ride looking like it's just kind of going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing very easily as far as that goes. So we'll build our queue in here, get all that situated, and get the ride ready to go. One of the things too is you can put a bunch of trains on these things at a time, but I don't think I've ever been to a park where there's more than say 3 trains on a circuit, and those are usually some pretty sizable ones too. So I try not to do that if I can avoid it, and kind of leave it at that. But we're gonna just do the one train here as far as that goes, and then we do have an up and over on the launch here for the Schwarzkopf coaster, because I feel like that's a little bit cleaner than having to do a bunch of tunnels or trenches and things like that as we do. So that about wraps up our pathing. Although I wanted to clean this up just a little bit, just because I thought it would be better than just a big open trench to have a proper tunnel. Then we can use the wood sides here just to make it slightly themed a little bit, and add in some various fencing to protect our fall risk and everything. I have this sort of want, I guess, to line all of my pathways with fencing, which is really not the right way to do it. Most parks don't have that kind of thing, but I always feel like it looks so nice, so I try and, for the most part, avoid it, although I rarely do. So I just try and get it at least along ride paths and things like that guests might walk into. But I'm trying to make a cognitive effort to, or a conscious effort, I guess, to do less fencing right up along the pathway and more kind of landscape buffering in areas and things like that. So we're going to work on that as we continue to play through all these scenarios. But this is a nice and easy one in general. I like the kind of simple, easy challenge where you can pretty much beat this in say 45 minutes or so. It's a pretty good starter for sure, and it gives you a lot of freedom to kind of do whatever. We're gonna toss one more ride in here. Observation tower seems like the right way to go about it. I feel like this park in general does well with sort of gentle rides and things like that. So we're going to stick that in because it seems like the right thing to do. A couple of food stalls back here because I've really been neglecting that, like I said before. And then filling in a bunch of trees just because it also seems like the right way to go about it and to fit the whole thing in there. But our train seems popular. I would love to have the covered cars just because that would be a win when it's raining. But I don't actually know if that was an RCT1 original. I think it was, but I'm not positive. I'm sure you'd have to research it as far as that goes, but that's okay. We're going to leave it at that as far as that goes. But right now we're just coming through with fences and landscape and things like that, and just trying to come through and build out the just overall kind of look of the place, because we do have a lot of sparse grass area here, and I feel like the landscaping and the plants, and especially clustering these bushes, I feel like these bushes are super super useful for all of that. So that's what we're gonna do as far as that goes. But that pretty much wraps up the park. So that was Forest Frontiers, a couple of coasters and a couple of flat rides, and why don't we go ahead and jump into a quick real-time view, and then we'll take a spin around the park here. So join me in just a second, and we'll look at that. All right, so let's take a look at Forest Frontiers here in a completed state. There's not a whole lot to see on this one, but that's okay. It's a pretty small park to begin with. We have our carousel flanked with our little ornamental trees and some flowers. And then the other car ride here on the side. I maybe could have made these cars a little brighter, perhaps, and friendlier colored, but that's okay. We missed that one. We'll get it next time. Of course, our haunted house on the hill, because that just feels like the right thing to do as far as that goes. Scrambler, carousel, or not carousel, that's a Ferris wheel. And then our spiral slide here all in a row along our midway, which I feel like is something that I do on almost every single one of these Forest Frontiers builds. But, you know, it's part of the whole thing. And then we've got our junior coaster here, so I didn't name it, but it doesn't really follow any particular rules as far as that stuff goes. I really don't like the ending, but for the most part, the rest of it seems okay and works all right. You get the nice little kind of double curve drop there, and a couple other little dips and curves and things like that. So, you know, on the whole, not too bad. It seems like it draws a fair bit of crowd, which is always a good thing. And then over here we have our wooden coaster, which is doing pretty all right, especially because it's a bit of a capacity monster with the 6 cars and the 24 people per train. We've got our very Phoenix-ish style ride here with the double up, big kind of drop here, a little bit of an airtime ejector hill right there. Parts and pieces that cross over themselves, and on the whole, I just think it worked out pretty nicely. A little bit of cheating here with our tunnel using the shift key, but that's okay. We can budget a little bit here and there. It didn't really affect our winning or anything like that. Have our custom lake here, which I wanted to make look sort of natural, with the boat hire inside, the pirate ship on the other side as well. There's the train that we have wrapped around this whole space, and it comes back on itself right here in the middle, and then wraps around the lake. Otherwise, we had to dip the pathway down and under here and down and under over here just to make that work a little better. But I think it's pretty clean and looks all right as far as that goes. I'm not a huge fan of our really tall walkover path right here, but had to do what we had to do to get it to fit. And we have our shuttle coaster here kind of cutting the park in half in the back. Very classic sports golf shuttle loop, but it's a good fit for the park, so I think it works all right as far as that goes. The queue is wrapping through these trees, seems to fit pretty well, and does, I don't know, in my opinion, looks all right as far as all that goes. Then our log flume back here, two drops, kind of a smaller one here than the big one at the end. I didn't build a reservoir because I probably just forgot about it, as my guess. I don't really remember. And then a bunch of nice little curved spaces here. I don't think we had the mine scenery at the time, and we still don't. So otherwise, that would be an easy button kind of theme around the whole thing. And of course, the observation tower here at the end. Don't make it too tall, but tall enough to see the whole space and kind of see the area around it. So a decent little look as far as that goes. And then a couple of quick food stalls here as well. But that's pretty much it. You know, there's not much to this park. It's a relatively small one, but I'm pretty happy with how it all situated in the space. And of course, we beat the scenario goals handedly, but that will be expected, I suppose, at this level of the game. So next up is going to be Dynamite Dunes, and we'll get into that one here in a little bit. So hope you enjoyed this little bit of scenario play, a little bit different from what we usually do on this channel, but we're going to have some more here. And again, if you want to catch this on stream, we do stream generally every Sunday, although that can vary a little bit, but twitch.tv/Amusement Academy for more of that. So until next time, thank you all very much for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.